Guys, welcome to Real Classic Film Reviews, and welcome to a classic Western movie review of 1957's The Tall T, starring Randolph Scott, Richard Boone and Maureen O'Sullivan. Now, this is directed by Budd Boetticher, and it's a compact but fascinating little film that's one of the quintessential examples of the Western genre and one of the greatest Westerns of the 1950s. The Tall T is a film that ticks off all of those essential elements of classic Western cinema: isolated landscapes, stoic heroes, ruthless baddies, and moments of tense, nail-biting suspense. However, what sets The Tall T apart is its sharp character development, certainly between Randolph Scott and Richard Boone, a pair of guys on opposite sides of the moral spectrum, but who may not be so different after all. Now, if you look for it, there's certainly shades of the Pacino and De Niro dynamic in Michael Mann's Heat. Two guys going head-to-head, but having a mutual respect for one another. Anyway, we'll chat about all of that. Let's take a look.
You know what's going to happen to you?
I think so.
You scared?
Yeah.
Well, you're honest about it, I say that for you.
That well's gonna be chock full.
So, like I mentioned, this is, on the surface, a pretty simple story. We have Randolph Scott as Pat Brennan, a former Confederate soldier who's made a new life for himself as a rancher. Now, Brennan's having a bit of a bad day when it's upended further when he's taken hostage by a group of ruthless bandits led by the cold-blooded Frank Usher, played here by Richard Boone. Now, the gang has also kidnapped a lady, Doretta, played by Maureen O'Sullivan, the wife of a wealthy rancher, and her useless husband, Willard, played by John Hubbard, and they plan to ransom her for a large sum of money. Now, the villains here don't really need Brennan as part of this plan, but he's kept alive by Boone's outlaw out of a kind of respect and moral code, and it's this relationship between the pair that's the most important and interesting part of The Tall T.
I swear we won't tell a thing.
I know you won't. You go along with what he said about what's happened here?
If I said yes, you wouldn't believe me.
Yeah, it's dumb even talking about it, even.
Now, what this movie doesn't have is large-scale action, sweeping vistas and epic scope. This is a character piece. You see, Boone's outlaw is saddled with a couple of young accomplices. Young Billy Jack, played here by Skip Homier, and the unfortunately named Chink, played by Henry Silver, who's great here, by the way. And all the pair do is brag about gunfights and women, and Boone's character is tired of it all and has his eye on settling down.
Sometimes I get the feeling they ain't even along. Always talking the same words, women, drinking and the such. I ain't narrow thinking, but a man gets tired of that all the time. A man gets awful tired of that.
And I think he keeps Scott alive for no less a reason than he prefers talking to him than to his low-life partners. Now, in the realm of the Western genre, I think it's quite easy to fall into the trap of creating one-dimensional characters, the honourable, unshakable lawman, the snarling, trigger-happy villain. But our hero here, Pat Brennan, played by Scott, is a man of quiet strength and principles, a little bit like Shane. Now, Brennan is not the typical cowboy hero. He's just a man who's been around a good few years and is mature enough to stay calm in what looks to be a pretty perilous situation. At the start of the movie, he's already lost his horse in a bet and catches a ride with Maureen O'Sullivan and her new husband, only to arrive at the scene of an attempted robbery and small massacre that happens off camera. And that's one of the things that I like about Randolph Scott as an actor. He's so calm and collected without being overly heroic, if that makes sense. And speaking of characters that aren't typical, the Tall T's antagonist, Frank Usher, played quite chillingly here by Richard Boone, doesn't really fit the mould of a typical villain. He's not wide-eyed and irrationally evil. He doesn't shout and scream his evil plans, but calmly goes about his business. Now, he spends the film just wanting to talk to Scott's character about his life and his plans for the future, with a gun in his hand at all times, of course. But you never quite know what he's going to do, right up until the film's final moments.
You cook good coffee.
Brennan. Talk.
Now, being a movie from the 1950s, there's certainly, I think, some interesting subtext here about the youth of the day. The young outlaws are seen as kind of Wild West juvenile delinquents, aimless with no future plans and daydreams of getting some money so they can find a town full of women. Boone, meanwhile, the adult of the trio, wants some stability and a real life away from violence and crime. And fair play to Maureen O'Sullivan here as the newlywed who is held to ransom. She's not just the damsel in distress, and even though she goes through quite a harrowing ordeal, doesn't descend into wide-eyed scream queen. Now, Budd Boetticher and his cinematographer Charles Lawton Jr. know that they've got a great location here in the quite stunning and unusual Lone Pine area of the Alabama Hills. It's got these visually stunning rock formations, and dozens of westerns are filmed here. How the West Was Won, The Ox-Bow Incident, Broken Arrow, and many modern movies also, from Iron Man, Gladiator, and Tremors, of course. Now, to be fair, it may be underutilised here, which brings me to my main gripe with the Tall T, and that's the fact that its finale feels just that little bit too rushed. Now, it is great that this is another compact and contained 80-minute Western adventure, and I won't spoil anything here, of course, but there's certainly a feeling of fast-forwarding towards a bit of an abrupt end, which is a little bit of a shame considering some of the interesting character work that's been done. And I've loved a little bit more of Scott and Boone going head-to-head. So yeah, The Tall T was directed by Budd Boetticher and was the first of 5 westerns that he'd make with Randolph Scott. This followed by Decision at Sundown, Buchanan Rides Alone, Ride Lonesome, and Comanche Station. All released within a few years of each other, and all released as B-movies, really, with Time and Reassessment claiming them as throwaway Wild West tales on the surface only. But just below that, explorations of deeper themes such as honour, greed, and revenge. Now, scattered with some moments which must have been quite shocking for audiences nearly 70 years ago.
Don't look at him.
And that's just what The Tall T is, a western that explores themes of growing up and growing old, and the human cost of violence, of leaving the wild part of the Wild West behind and settling down, or trying to at least. The Tall T may not have the grandiosity of some of the other westerns from the same era. It doesn't have the sweep of The Searchers or Shane, but it stands alongside those movies as a great example of the western's ability to balance action with quite deep moral questions. And its short runtime, I suppose, is an asset. It's a taut film that doesn't overstay its welcome. Now, of course, there's not a bum note in any of the performances here from Randolph Scott and Richard Boone, or any of the other cast for that matter. It's a movie that works on a few levels, both as a gripping western and as a meditation on honour, violence, and survival. Now, it arrived at a kind of fulcrum in the western genre's history, this middle point between Golden Age, Wild West daring do and spaghetti westerns and new Hollywood violence. The Tall T can be enjoyed for some of its B-movie thrills, or appreciated for its ability to ask difficult questions about the choices people make under extreme circumstances, or both. Go check it out.
Hold it.
You've been busy, ain't you?
Drop your gun.